This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Rolf Gerritsen, the CEO of MetalNRG, joins us today on Stockbox to shed more light on the overall strategy and to give investors more details and an understanding of where and how MetalNRG is progressing with its various investments. So thank you, Rolf, for coming on for your time today. I wonder if we can start with MNRG, the big picture. What's the overall strategy here?
Look, MetalNRG, just to go back a little bit in time, was originally set up on the NEX market, which illiquid, didn't offer much opportunity in terms of fundraising. And it got to a point where we were a little dissatisfied with it, or not dissatisfied, but we believed we had outgrown the market. And therefore, we were very keen to move on to the London Stock Exchange, which we did. And we did that as a successful stepping stone. And I think that enabled us to increase liquidity and increase the interest that people had in MetalNRG. One of the key aspects that we looked at was the investing philosophy and policy that we applied, and the previous incumbent to myself made sure that was changed and addressed. And more importantly, we looked very closely at the board to make sure that the board was fit for purpose. And if you look at the board today, you've got Christopher Latia Campbell, who's there as chairman, and his expertise and experience is quite wide. He's an accountant by background, but has spent a lot of time on energy, as well as spending on natural resources and gold, and has a real wealth of expertise and experience. He's also one of the founding directors of MetalNRG, which is a nice story, I think, in terms of longevity. You then look at the other members of the board. You've got myself, and I'll come back to myself in a moment, but you've got Christian Savaletsky, who's extremely well known in the resources world. He's chairman of Eurasia. He's got a number of other board positions with well-known and listed entities focused on resource. His background is very much consulting prior to the board positions he had, but his background is very much around consulting on major resource projects, mineral resources. And his expertise and his value add on anything that we look at in terms of natural resources, especially on the gold, uranium, and others, copper, etc., is invaluable. So he's a very important piece to the puzzle. And then you've got Pierpaolo Rocco, who's got an outstanding wealth of expertise and experience in the oil and gas. And the other thing that brings this all together is we're all rather entrepreneurial, and we're really keen to grow the business. So what we've done is we've built a business model which is loosely based around private equity. In other words, we invest in projects, we back managements that are dedicated to those projects, and we seek to crystallize value by IPOing or spinning off these assets once they're ready to do so. Once they're ready to do so is key, because you need, in our opinion, you need revenue, you need profitability, you need further exploration upside, you need a board in place, and you need a very clear strategy for that asset, or the way we've bundled them is under special purpose vehicles. And the reason we've done that is, one, to protect existing investors, but also to make sure that we can offer an opportunity to spin these off while maintaining economic interest. Because what we don't want to do is just walk away, spin them off, and say, thank you very much, you're on your own. We want to remain involved and have an economic interest in those companies that we end up spinning off.
Okay. And what's the advantage to spinning them off then, from MetalNRG's point of view and investors, shareholders in MetalNRG?
The biggest advantage is that what we're focused on is companies or assets that are either close to or in production, and therefore will be or are revenue producing. That means that the acquisition cost is something that we invest, and then as soon as possible, we try to get these companies to stand on their own 2 feet and feed funds back into the group so that allows us to start covering our overheads. More importantly, once we spin them off and we actually create and crystallize value, it will be MetalNRG that will be in a position to recycle some of those funds into new projects. And therefore, the benefit down the line to existing investors is that we don't have to go back to market to raise additional funds to dilute them. So that down the line, we're not there yet, but down the line, that will be the benefit. Once we get this model up and running in the way it's supposed to be operating, which will take a little bit of time because we're also looking for value in undervalued assets. So to reorganize these and to put them on a stable footing and to get them to the levels of revenue producing assets that they need to be takes a little bit of time. But once we're there, we will be in a position to recycle money and reinvest in additional and new projects that will create further opportunities for spin-offs.
Okay, I understand. So you get the project, you capitalize them, you put a board in place, you get the revenue coming in, which then feeds back into MetalNRG, revenue back to the group level, which you can then reinvest and expand on the portfolio effectively.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So let's have a look.
Now, Mark. That's going to take a little bit of time because we're working towards getting there. We're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of revenue producing assets today, we've got MetalNRG that's producing some revenue, and we're building up that portfolio to get ourselves to that position where we can, on an ongoing basis, work with revenue producing assets that are coming back into group so that we can recycle funds.
Okay. Well, let's look then at the structure today then. You've got direct investments, and under that you have Goldridge 100%, MetalNRG Eco 100%, BritNRG 50%, and then you've got the indirect investments as well. So are the indirect more just small percentages in projects?
They are currently, the indirect are currently small interest in projects. But for example, if you look at IMC, which is our uranium interest in Kyrgyzstan, we have an option to bring that to 51%.
Okay.
Once we do that, if we get to that point, it would go under the direct investment and it would be a direct investment. Okay. Well, let's have a look then at each of the projects and the investments in detail. So starting with Goldridge then, can you take us through the Goldridge project and opportunity? Yes, look, Goldridge is an acquisition that was made about 18 months ago, maybe a bit less. We acquired the asset for shares and cash equivalent to $700,000. And the reason we bought the asset was that we were aware of the fact that there were 3 previously producing mines. And we were aware of the fact that there were substantial opportunities with waste left behind by previous operators that we could actually turn into revenue. And that was the path we set ourselves down. And we looked very carefully at the waste dumps. We looked very carefully at the pillars that are underground. And we announced results, and some of those results in terms of gold context were extremely interesting and extremely positive. There was a lot of excitement about that. We then started looking at how to exploit that opportunity. And one of the things that we did is we completed a competent persons report by the consultants SRK. And they said, hang on a minute, there's a bigger picture here. And Christian was also pushing quite hard because he was also telling us that no one has looked at the geological structures that connect these three previously producing mines. And that means that there are, between these mines that we have large areas of unexplored territory. When SRK came back to us, they said, look, there's a possibility here that there are a number of vein systems that would offer open pitable opportunities to generate more revenue than if you go after the waste dump. More importantly, if you go after the waste dumps first and then go after the open pitable opportunities, you might actually snooker yourself because you won't be able to go after certain pillars and you won't be able to go after certain waste dumps because you've taken a different approach. So therefore, they've suggested take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and establish the geological structures and the connectivity in terms of opportunity that lies between these mines, and determine whether or not the assumption of an open pitable opportunity is a valid assumption. That has meant that we've had to go back to market and say, look, gentlemen, there's a much bigger opportunity here. If we go after the small opportunity, we lose the opportunity, which is much larger. The small opportunity would be quite rapid. The large opportunity is going to take a little bit more time because it needs a bit more work. And we're currently undergoing that work. Bear in mind that these previously producing mines also have reams of information. And due to the previous ownership that was fragmented, in other words, a number of companies owned these licenses before us, the information that is available is extremely substantial and significant, but it is all over the place. So we're pulling all of that together and creating a proper data room, developing a new presentation based on this larger picture that we're looking at, and going out at the same time to confirm that those assumptions are actually valid. And that's work in progress. And that work is now well ahead in terms of the execution. However, you also have to bear in mind that Arizona, you've got temperatures of 50, 55 degrees. So on-field work is a little bit difficult. Mm-hmm. But by November, we will have the fuller picture. And we'll have a very clear path or pathway to develop the asset and to create value. Additionally, within the geography that we're operating and within 10 miles of it, there are a number of additional previously producing gold mines. And there is a possibility of consolidating the area that we're looking at.
Okay.
So again, that would give us an opportunity to build up that whole special purpose vehicle. But you don't want to start making acquisitions until you have confirmation that bigger picture is available to you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So again, it's putting the puzzle together. And I think investors are a little frustrated because they're saying, well, hang on, Rolf, you said that there's an opportunity and it's going to be quite immediate. Mm. That opportunity is there. It is not going away. Mm. The question is, how do we make sure that we extrapolate the most value for our shareholders? Mm-hmm. The implication of it is it's going to take us a little bit longer.
So are you putting a time, like a dead stop date on when to make a decision then, whether to go for the more near-term waste dump opportunity or look at potentially an open pit mine?
By November, we'll have a very good view on that, and we'll have a pathway to value and how we take it forward.
Okay.
And that is going to be, that will then be the pathway that we announce and that we pursue.
Okay. And who's working on this at the moment, Rolf? Have you got a board in place for Goldridge or not?
Goldridge, we've got, basically we own 100% of it. There's a company out of Canada that we own that owns the asset. We've got our legal advisors working on it. We've got Bart, who runs, from a geological perspective, the asset, and he's key. He was the consultant working at SRK. He's working with us, and he's the one driving forward the whole development program of the asset. Based on the findings that we're going to have by mid November, we will then start looking at the pathway, and based on the pathway that we pursue value with, we'll then start building the structure around that. But for the time being, we're using contractors that Bart is bringing in, and we're bringing in on specific elements of work to be completed, and Bart is orchestrating all of it. The other positive aspect on this is that Bart is prepared, because he's excited about the project, to take half of his fees in shares, because he sees that there is potentially substantial upside in this opportunity. Okay,
good. Well, let's move on to the next project then. That's MetalNRG Eco Limited, which is your partnership with EQTech. Now, you've done the first deal, haven't you? That was announced recently. Give us the lowdown on MNRG Eco then, Rolf.
Okay, I think first of all, you have to take a step back again and look at the space that we're investing in. And the space that we're investing in is waste to energy. And overarching is green, sustainable energy production. The company in the UK listed that has the most expertise in this field is EQTech. And we've entered a partnership with them. And we've entered a partnership with them for a number of reasons. One, because they have expertise. And their expertise is quite unique. And their gasification process are patented. They've done years of research on it. And they've got a number of reference points of cases that demonstrate that it works. The second reason we entered into partnership with them is that over the last 12 to 18 months, they've been working their socks off with a number of European partners, local partners in Italy, in Greece, in Spain, in Croatia, in you name it, in a number of different countries, to assess a number of opportunities. And they've created a short list of opportunities that they believe are the most valuable from an investment perspective. And some of the key criteria that they've used is to look at projects that are that were previously in production, that still have some premium tariffs that we can feed off, and that need to be partly upgraded as opposed to built from scratch, and therefore diminishing the risks. And because the premium tariffs are in place, the financials are much more interesting. So I refer to these as shovel-ready projects that have a higher than usual return on investment, internal rate of return, than these projects tend to offer. Italy was a point in case. It's a small project, but we're taking forest and farm waste, wood chips, and we're converting those into heat and electricity. And we are hooked in at premium rates once we get back into production, into the grid. And the project is, as I said, a total investment of around 2.1 million euros. MetalNRG's participation is 700,000. Within Q2 of 2020, this project will produce a minimum EBITDA of 750,000 euros per annum. The agreement with the operating company, which is the special purpose vehicle, EQTech Italia, is that they will withhold about 6 month operating costs in the company itself, and anything else will be distributed. So again, that's how the model will be built. Now you start looking at the beauty of EQTech's short list of projects, and we're in conversations to join them on possibly other investments. The due diligence they've done, we're looking at the financials, we're bringing in our own views, and we're looking at structures and how it makes sense, and to see whether or not there's a role for us to play. But the whole partnership is not just to do EQTech Italia, it's to do a number of these. So let's assume you do three or five of these projects within the next 12 to 18 months. And if they're all the same size, and if they're all the same time frame of ways, you can do the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And very rapidly, your revenue from these projects become interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then this becomes a standalone unit, business unit, that offers you adaptability and flexibility in terms of what's the best way of extracting value for our shareholders. Is it through a listing? Is it maintaining it? Is it whatever? But it offers us flexibility and adaptability to enable us to drive value for shareholders.
Okay.
Again, it's going to take a little bit of time. The project in Italy to recommission is going to take us to Q2 2022. And that's when it will be plugged back in and it will start generating revenue.
Okay. And the idea here, again, it's to bring in the revenue. It's to get that revenue generating coming back to group level.
Correct.
Okay. I wonder if we can just touch on EQTech just for a moment. What can you tell us about EQTech and their track record in this space?
Well, they've got a number of plants that they have operating. I think the longest one they have is a waste energy plant in Greece. In Spain, and that's been running for about 10 years. And basically, they take olive grove waste, and they convert it into electricity.
Okay.
And they're an AIM-listed company. They've their share price, I think, was the best performing share price on AIM last year. They've done outstandingly well.
Mm-hmm.
And they still have to prove themselves, because they have a few reference points, but the market is never happy with one or two. They always want a few more, and Italy will be one of those. And so again, we're working very closely with them in driving forward the assets. I know David Palumba for a number of years. I've worked very well with him in the past, and he's a man of his word, and I have a good degree of trust, but will always inspect what I expect.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think the green investment space is only going to grow in the future.
I think there's more. There's even more to that, Mark, because if you take waste, which is a specific area within green, the dynamics are fascinating, because the issue of incinerating and waste and waste landfill is being taken away. And waste is not diminishing in volume.
Mm-hmm.
Quite the opposite. There's statistics telling us that over the next 10 years, we're going to double the level of waste. Now, we can't put it in land. We can't put it, in infilling land, and we can't incinerate it. So what are we going to do with it? And this is where this whole gasification process with EQTech comes in, where we're taking waste and we're converting it into heat and electricity and syngas. That I think is in terms of supply, which is always critical, there's an abundance of it. The more there is going to be, the question then is pricing. And I believe that because the volumes are increasing so substantially, you're only going to see a decrease in pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the supply for your electricity is going to diminish. You're providing a sustainable, eco-green solution that is currently where the money is going. And okay, the return in the internal rates of return are not necessarily as good as a gold project, but these are projects that offer sustainable, predictable, ongoing revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And to start building up a company on the premise that I opened up with, that kind of revenue stream is interesting.
Yeah.
And again, down the line, you can start looking at a number of options in crystallizing value.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you package these projects up correctly, a lot of the pension funds are going to be looking at acquiring them because they're giving them an annual yield.
Yeah, it's stable.
And, that becomes stable revenue that people can predict and produce discounted cash flows on that they're very happy with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So again, it gives us that flexibility. But Rome was not built in a day. It's going to take a bit of time to get there.
Yeah, indeed.
But the end, sorry, Mark, the end objective that I'm working towards is very clear in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, you've explained that very well, and that's fundamental then to the strategy of MNRG, as you said at the start of our talk, and revenue, hopefully, Q2 2022. So that's good to look forward to that. So let's move on now to IMC and the Kamush-Anovskoye uranium deposit in Kyrgyzstan. What can you tell us about that, Rolf?
Look, this is a fascinating project, which was previously part of an aborted attempt to raise funds.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I say aborted? Because we were ready to go with a substantial fundraise to finance this project into production, and the government of Kyrgyzstan at that point banned the exploitation and the exploration of uranium in country. That put a freeze on our work. Now, I think if I remember correctly, the ban occurred in May. The government had issued IMC with a mining license covering the area in April. So we've been in ongoing conversations with government representatives to see what could be done about this.
Mm-hmm.
Politics have moved on. I think we've been about 18 months now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new president, there's a new parliament, and there are extremely strong indications, informal, but extremely strong indications coming out of the country that the ban on the exploitation and exploration of uranium will be lifted. That would mean, if that is the case, that the mining code would need to be adjusted. That needs to be ratified by Parliament. But it also means that our mining license would be reinstated. Now, again, nothing formal yet, but it would appear from what we're hearing that it could well go there. And so here we have a project that we currently own about 10% of. It has an NPV of just around 30 million. The uranium prices over the last 18 months have only been going up, and the whole market is becoming more and more interesting. We have an option which remains in place to get up to 51% of this particular project. The development of the project requires a $6 million capex, and it would be producing on an annual basis once in production, roughly about $12 million in revenue. And we would have about 50% of that, so there's $6 million there. So again, we're not there. We are staying very close to it. We've got the management team, both in country and out of the US IMC as a US company, that are very much on the case. And we believe that there is a good opportunity that by the beginning of next year, we might see some changes, which would be highly beneficial, because the only uranium play that you have on the UK market is yellow cake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there aren't many.
There's nothing much more, and I think it would position us very nicely. The numbers would need to be looked at once again, because 18 months have gone by. The price has changed, probably not only of material that we require to build it up. So is it 6 million? Is it 5? Is it 8? That would need to be looked at in terms of development cost. And the second thing that would need to be looked at is the extractions and the price of uranium at that point in time. And then the third part is how do you finance that? And it's a development project, and therefore it's possibly project financed. But again, to be looked at and to be determined once we have the tick in the box from the government in country.
Indeed. Okay.
The last key point on this project is we've always, and we still maintain and are strong believers, that this is actually an eco-friendly extraction project. It has very little to do with mining, because what we have here is the uranium mines had the uranium which flowed out and down the mountains into a field. And that field is peat bog, and that's impregnated with uranium. And what we're actually doing is we're cleaning up that field to turn it back into a farmable land. And therefore, there's a green element to this that produces uranium. And so there's a cleanup operation that's part of this, which is also extremely attractive.
Okay. I know this has been on the MNRG books for a while, but it's good to see that you're perhaps starting to see some positive signs there after all this time. That hopefully you can revitalize that project.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's finish with BritNRG, and that is the most advanced of the direct investments. I believe it'll be the first SPV to be spun out, and it's already profitable. It's already revenue generating, and of course, it has its own board and management in place, and it is looking to expand. So yeah, give us the story, Rolf.
Well, we went with Pier Paolo. We developed a very precise and concise strategy, and that was that there are a number of onshore UK wells that offer an opportunity. And the first thing we said, well, are we able to actually engage with that opportunity? And the answer was, well, if you're not considered to be an operator by the OGA in the UK as an onshore operator, you're not even going to enter a conversation. So step number one was to find a suitable acquisition, small, that we were going to use as a stepping stone to look at additional acquisitions. And that was executed extremely well by Pier Paolo. And we acquired Sunswept, which is 6 licenses, 3 exploration licenses, 3 producing licenses, 1 well producing around 50 barrels a day, and 2 other, 1 well blocked in, waxed in, that we thought we could get unwaxed quite quick. So the first thing was get yourself that asset, put it on a footing where you are recognized by the OGA in the UK as an oil operator, onshore oil operator. We've ticked that box. We've got that. Next step is secure the asset. And what I mean by secure the asset is, as I previously said, we seek to invest in undervalued assets. So undervalued assets are undervalued because they have problems. And those problems were with the regulators, the problems were with the maintenance on the well. So there were a number of operational issues, fixable, but that needed to be tackled and needed to be addressed. That, in the first 100 days, again, successfully completed. We've got a much better relationship with both the LGA and the HSC than the previous incumbent had. It's still work in progress. There's still ongoing things that we're addressing, and there will always be, but we've got it on a stable footing. We then went and we unwaxed the second well, and we're now at a level where we're producing roughly 100, 110 barrels a day. So again, we're getting there. It's moving upwards. The next stage now is to maintain and develop that asset further. And we believe there's other opportunities where we might be able to bring it up to, let's say, for argument's sake, 350 barrels a day. And there's work that Pierpaolo and his team are currently conducting to see whether that's feasible and realistic. So we're short because we also said we're looking for a target of around 1,000 barrels a day to IPO this. Okay, but that gives us an indication of the gap that we need to fill pre-IPO. And that is going to be done by looking at potential acquisitions. And those are conversations that we're currently in. We're looking at those opportunities at the moment. Let's see, it's always a lengthy process. You look at the opportunities, and we're sticking to very strict criteria to evaluate those. But the idea is that we're working on and we're working towards is very clear: to get BritNRG listed on probably the London Stock Exchange within the next 16 to 18 months.
Okay.
On a target of around 1,000 barrels a day.
Okay.
A lot of work to be done, but that's the path we're on. And we are also making sure that when we do that, MetalNRG maintains an economic interest in the project itself. So it's not an idea of just spinning it off, taking a bit of money off the table, and goodbye, on we go. No, it's making sure that we stay with it, we work with them, and we can do more things together while maintaining that economic interest in the actual revenue that it is producing.
Okay. And how much revenue are we talking at the moment, Rolf?
If you do your numbers, I think you're talking at around 120, 150,000 a month, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay. And is that coming back to the group level, or is that staying within BritNRG to help develop?
The way we structure these transactions, the way we structure the investments in the SPVs is that there are certain management resources that are being applied to the SPV. So there's a return there of inflowing money. And the way we structure any development capital that they might need could be in a form of a convertible loan note. And those are either convertible on IPO or they're paid back with interest. So there's a recycling of portions, not large amounts, because we want to make sure that we don't starve the SPV, because the SPV needs to build up strength, financial strength, because we're seeking to IPO it. But there is money flowing back into group from BritNRG based on management resources that we're supplying to the SPV, and also interest on certain investments that we've made.
Okay. And the timeline we're looking at is 16 to 18 months to get it listed, and at that point there you want to be looking at 1,000 barrels per day.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we're aiming for, yes.
Okay. And you're confident you have everything in place to achieve that, you think?
Look, we're sitting here today, yes, but I also know from experience that there are always hurdles and barriers that you have to go through once you're in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And we're dealing with those on a daily basis.
Okay.
The most important aspect here is that we have the resources in place, both within the SPV and MetalNRG itself as a group, to address those.
Okay.
And so any problems that we encounter we're at this point confident that we can address them successfully.
Okay, well, thank you, Rolf, for covering all the projects there. To close off then, just coming back to the group level, the MNRG high-level group, why invest now? What is the investment opportunity? Because that is the way that investors are going to get access to these opportunities, isn't it? It's through the MNRG listed on the stock exchange.
Correct. And I think if you look at it today, look, the share price is not very, no, this is the wrong word. It's a very low entry point.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, you look at the market in general, and the market overall is pretty tough, especially for the junior resource companies. And you look at news coming out from other players that are in this space, and the impact on share price is nil.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we are sometimes asked, well, don't you have a bit of news to go out? Well, material news is being worked on. Once we have material news, we will issue it. And we don't issue news to drive the share price. We issue news because we have a material event that requires us to issue news. And I think that's important. We're just not about creating news for the creation of news. And I think also, if you look at the overall investors, I think a lot of people have gone on holiday, frankly, after a very tiring 18 months, and the market is a little bit quiet at the moment. I personally believe, and I've spoken to a number of our brokers as well, and there's a belief that we'll see a bit of a pickup in September. So, sorry, Mark, I've digressed a little bit, but to answer the question, why invest in MetalNRG? I think first and foremost, we've got a very clear strategy. We know where we're going. We know broadly how we're going to get there. And more importantly, we have a very clear idea on how we're going to crystallize value for our shareholders. We're at a very low entry point in terms of our share price today. And I think that if you look in the downside, there's probably little downside risk. Because if you take those assets that we've just described and you do your numbers on, one, the opportunity, and two, current value, you'll see that the overall value of those assets is substantially higher than the current share price. And if you then look at the overall accumulative opportunity that exists, now you can discount that. You have to discount that because there's risks and there's time associated with that. But again, the share price should be much higher than it is today. I think we've seen a decrease in volumes, but I also look at others that I consider to be peers, and I've seen a substantial decrease in their volumes and the liquidity. So I'm not overly worried. I think that's just the market taking a breather and saying we need a bit of time. And I also believe that we've created quite a complex story. And that story needs to be explained in its complexity and in its detail for people to start appreciating what we're building, how we're building it, and how people are going to be able to get a substantial amount of value from this investment.
Mm-hmm.
So last but not least, we're building these special purpose vehicles that have the dedicated management that are able to deliver the strategy. And at board level, we have some real strength that can help the SPVs drive forward towards achieving their ambitions. I think all of those are very good reasons for people to look at MetalNRG as a realistic investment opportunity right now.
Okay. Well, Rolf Gerritsen, the CEO of MetalNRG, thank you very much for your time going through in a lot of detail there the investment opportunity for MetalNRG and explaining the direct investment project and the plan to generate revenue.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this Stockbox interview. For more information, interviews and videos, visit our website at stockboxmedia.com or give us a follow on Twitter by searching @StockboxMedia.